welcome to episode 7 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary, with Kristen
and Catherine, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club where we take one book a month and dive into all the drama, adventure, and romance we can find.
Hi, Catherine.
Hey, Kristen.
So I figured this week we would talk about fantasy worlds because Crescent City, the book we're talking about this month, is an urban fantasy. So it has technology that's sort of similar to ours. So sort of thought we would discuss the fantasy worlds that we would want to live in. So why don't you go first? What fantasy world would you like to live in?
Sure. So it's a bit of a hard question because obviously I'd love to live in any of the fantasy worlds that I read about, but I would want to be like a complete badass and be amazing. And I just know that if I was actually in one of those worlds, I'd probably just die immediately, if I'm being honest. Like, it wouldn't be the badass that I'd want to be. I like the idea of Crescent City since I love having my phone, but I obviously wouldn't want to be a human there. I don't think anyone would. Um, I'd like the idea of like a Throne of Glass kind of world, but likely not as a human there either. And probably after the end of Kingdom of Ash, where there's maybe a little bit more peace there. So I think that's what I'd go with.
Okay. I have like sort of multiple answers. So I've got like a boring answer and a fun answer. So boring answer first would probably be Kelly Armstrong, her Women of the Other World series. So it's set in modern North America, and like everything is the same. There just happens to be witches and werewolves and demons and seers, and so like my life would not change at all, but there would just be magic, and I think that would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, my more fun answer is probably like Neverland seems like a cool place.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's sort of a very old school literary,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
but it just seems like I obviously wouldn't want to be a pirate. I'd want to be one of because I feel like the only adults are pirates. I don't want to be a pirate.
Yeah.
It just seems like they have all the cool stuff there. Like they have mermaid grottos and they have fairies and you can fly and there's all kinds of cool stuff and not a whole lot of danger,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, the pirates chase Peter Pan all the time, but that's nothing.
Yeah.
And there's a crocodile trying to eat people, but he's got that clock inside, so you can hear him ticking.
That's
So,
true.
you know. So that's my if I was a human fun world.
Yeah.
I also would like to live in like a TOG, like Throne of Glass or a Court of Thorns and Roses worlds.
Mm-hmm.
So like in my head, they're essentially the same, but I wouldn't want to be human. I would want to be fae.
Yeah. I think Throne of Glass would be easier to be human than a Court of Thorns and Roses, but I still wouldn't want to be.
Yeah. Like, and obviously we're talking about what fantasy world we want to be in. Obviously, if I could choose a fantasy world, I would also choose to not be a human,
Yeah, that's very
right?
true.
Yeah. If I had the choice, I
Mm-hmm.
would want magic in some way, shape, or form.
Exactly.
Um, so yeah, so this is week 3 of 5 for Sarah J Maas's House of Earth and Blood from the Crescent City series. Just a heads up, we are not a spoiler-free zone, and things might get a little saucy.
So last week we kind of ended off with Bryce making a scene to help a stunned Hunt get out of a situation where he didn't want to look or where he was kind of shocked by Sandriel's presence. And then Hunt got a job from Micah, basically to put him back in his place. And he comes back a bit defeated and kind of a mess. So, jumping into this week, we're doing chapters 33 to 51. And these chapters start off with Hunt going to see the Oracle. And they kind of have a pretty interesting conversation. He goes in, and the Oracle isn't really like all knowing. She can kind of see some things, but she doesn't really know everything. She tells him that the horn can be fixed, but she can't see how. And then she asks him if he wants to see his future. And she uses his real name, Orion. And he declines, which I found kind of interesting because I would want to know, I think, if I was given the choice.
I definitely would not.
No?
No, because if she were to tell me that like I had 10 years to live, I would then spend every day of those 10 years freaking out over how much time I had left.
Yeah, but like it doesn't seem like she's really, although I guess the only really things that we've heard about the Oracle have been bad. But when Bryce was talking about the Oracle, it was like they'll tell you what your career is going to be like, and like just feel like he might have maybe gone down a different path in the future of the book if he had have known what was going to happen. But then maybe he wouldn't have gone down the path he went down if he knew anything. So it's one of those complex time traveling things.
Hmm.
Anyway, so he doesn't want to know, and she also asks him if he wants to know what Bryce saw, and kind of ends the visit with the Oracle telling him to stay away from Bryce, which is like super ominous. And that's
Yeah. It's one of those things where, like, obviously, if you, like, I wonder if she did that on purpose, like, oh, stay away from her, knowing,
mhm.
because if she's, like, maybe not all knowing, but
She knows some
she
things.
knows a lot,
Yeah,
do you think maybe she knows what type of person he is and knows, oh, the stay away from Bryce thing, knows that'll push him and make him even more curious to not stay away from her,
maybe.
if that makes sense?
Yeah, it makes me wonder what happens in the next books. So maybe we'll see something about it later, but who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah.
Um, she notes while he's there, she says that he reminds her of that which was lost long ago and that she did not realize would ever appear again. So just something to think about, I guess. We know his power is super unique and hasn't been around in a very long time, so it could be talking about that, could be talking
Yeah.
about something else, but it's just an
That,
interesting quote.
yeah, that does seem like that's what I think of as I think of he's got this power that no one else has, and maybe
Hmm.
that's has something to do with it.
Yeah. So he obviously leaves the Oracle and he meets up with Bryce and Ruhn, and they kind of discuss what they know so far. So basically, someone's trying to tear open a portal of sorts and let demons and possibly princes of hell into this world. It could be the human rebels, but really, whoever it is, they still need Ruhn to help. So this is the Horn. The Horn can open these portals, but the Horn needs the Starborn power to work, and the Horn is also broken. So they're assuming that whoever is looking for it can fix it, and then that their plan is to open portals. And I guess it would make sense if it's the human rebellion doing this because they're obviously trying to bring a war to Crescent City. So it makes a bit of sense to bring some demons there to fuck shit up.
Yeah, they do talk a little bit about like their princes of hell. There's what, seven princes of hell, and they
Hmm.
all rule almost like a floor, like
Yeah.
one of the pits, I guess, of hell. And apparently each prince is worse than the last. So like they're really like they're like Satan. It's like they're talking about bringing Satan out of the pit themselves.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's interesting. Like, obviously, Ruhn has the Starborn power, so they're sort of he's sort of concerned that this is maybe what the oracle meant when she told him he would be the last of his bloodline. He's now starting to wonder, oh, well, is it because they want to use me for the horn,
Hmm.
for my power? So he's starting to maybe get a little bit concerned.
Yeah, definitely. So Ruhn leaves then after they have this conversation, and Hunt finally asks Bryce why her oracle visit was so bad and why the oracle told him to stay away from her. So she just explains to him that when she went to go see the oracle was blinded for possibly weeks, and it was like in the news and everything, and her father was so disappointed that he like left her and threw her stuff out on the curb when she got back to his palace. And basically, not, she didn't say palace because she didn't tell him who her father is, but that her stuff was out on the curb and she had to kind of leave with no help at all. um which is, it's just kind of interesting that nobody really thought that blinding the oracle could mean anything other than something completely awful. Like, you'd think that they'd realize it could mean something else at worst, and what it actually means at best. Like, it doesn't seem logical to just be like, oh, she blinded the oracle, she's a terrible person, like, let's throw her out on her ass.
But like obviously too, it's unfortunate because like obviously it's not her fault. Like
Hmm.
the oracle had a vision. The vision blinded her. Yes, it was about her future, but like that's not her fault.
Yeah.
And like for everybody to make such a huge deal about it, like her father like completely cut her off.
Hmm.
Now again, we know it's the Autumn King and knows that we know that he needs little little motivation to be a dick.
Hmm.
But this just seems like such an odd thing to like to disown somebody over.
Yeah. I just thought that it was just weird that nobody even thought of what it could mean other than something like a horrible omen. It's what they all think. I'm like, the oracle has to know better than that. Like, I wonder if the oracle actually knows something. And like you said before, like she told Hunt to stay away to kind of get him to be more interested. Not more interested, but yeah, you kind of wonder what the oracle actually knows in this situation, because it just seems like a lot.
Yeah.
So they then go back to Bryce's work, and they talk about a vase because they're kind of looking at any art that is from older times that could have to do with the Kristallos demon. So they're trying to find other stories, and like maybe back then there wasn't writing, so they're like, maybe there's art about this demon. They also, they have a bit of a flirty moment when they're talking about this vase, and her toes curl in her shoes. This is a very SJM moment that she likes to say this a lot. And I like, I don't know, I've never noticed my toes curling because some guy turns me on. I don't know if that's a common thing with other people, but it's not something that's ever happened to me. So it's just interesting descriptor.
Yeah, I also I agree. It is sort of like it's one of those things that you always read in books, but like
Relatable.
it's not super realistic, I guess.
Yeah.
Like who and like when things are happening, yes, toe curling, fine. But like when they're just having a chat,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I sort of just from being a SJM fan in general
Hmm.
and sort of knowing her writing, um, I wonder if the species of fae they're just really like horny people. Like maybe they're just a really horny race because it's a running theme along all
Yeah.
her books, like you said.
Yeah. I wonder if she just thinks that the people that read her books are very horny. So she's like, which she's probably not wrong.
Yeah.
So Hunt gets a call, and they're able to go meet Philip Briggs now. So he's the human rebel that was originally blamed for Danica and the Pack's murder, but obviously didn't do it because it's now becoming basically a serial crime. So they're gonna have to go meet him in like half an hour or something. And Bryce kind of becomes a bit of a bitch to both Hunt and Lahaba at this point. I know she's having like a bit of a panic slash grief moment, but like Lahaba is just trying to be her friend and love her, basically. And it's just a little mean to her, I think. Like, who cares about Hunt? He's been a bit of an asshole up until now, so I don't really mind it for him. But anyway, I just felt bad for Lahaba.
Yeah, I would agree there. Like she's an awesome friend all the way around. She's super chipper. And like I know I said that I don't love her. So I do find she can get a bit annoying only because it's like she can't read the room.
Mm,
You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
she's super chipper and happy all the time and all she's doing is like she wants to ogle all these like built fey men and like flirt. But like read the room, your friend is essentially an empty husk of of a person.
yeah,
And like, I feel like there's a time and a place, and I feel like Lahaba doesn't always recognize that.
yeah. That's fair.
So,
Yeah.
but I also don't think she deserves to be treated the way she is by Bryce a lot. Like Bryce is not nice to her very often,
Hmm.
and I don't think that's fair either.
Yeah. So Hunt and Bryce go to see Briggs, and he's basically just like a tortured shell of a person. And it kind of makes you think, what are they even trying to get out of him anymore? Because, like, he can't know anything. He's been there since Danica died in solitude and being tortured when he wasn't in solitude, likely. It just seems, I don't know what they think they're going to get out of him.
But from the way that Hunt sort of like, because I think we're sort of inside Hunt's head a little bit.
Mm,
Um, when they were in the the holding room with him, and the way he sort of talked about it, he was sort of like, I know what he's going through. I recognize this look. I've been
hmm.
through that. So the way I took it was they're not trying to get anything out of him anymore. They're just torturing him for the sake of torture because he's committed a crime and he's in
Hmm.
jail and that's what you do.
Yeah. But, like, I don't even understand why Bryce and Hunt went to go see him. Like, he can't know anything about anything that happened recently. He's
Well,
been
I
stuck
mean,
there.
I guess unless they feel like maybe there are ways for him
Yeah.
to get information out or for people to get information in, or maybe he left instructions. I don't know.
Yeah. But he basically says that he liked Danica, and she gave him a bunch of warnings, probably more than he even really deserved. And he thought that she could have been a sympathizer. And Bryce is surprised to hear that, but like you said, it's kind of in Hunt's point of view. So you can kind of see that Danica's probably always been thinking of Bryce in a lot of the things that she does. And even Briggs talks about how Danica likely saw how her half human friend was being treated, and that's kind of why she is more of a sympathizer than most people. So it does make sense.
It honestly, like, I understand not wanting to sympathize with
Radicals.
Yeah, with radicals and with people who are trying to kill innocent people. Like
Hmm.
100%. Those are terrible people. But I would also expect, because like Bryce is like vehemently opposed to this guy, like
Hmm.
hates his guts, hates everything he stands for, which I find surprising because she
Yeah.
is half human. She has two human parents. Literally, the only thing keeping them from, like
Slavery.
slavery and war is that they were born in one country as opposed to another
Yeah. And her stepdad had to serve in the war anyway.
and kill humans.
Exactly. Yeah.
So like it sort of bothers me how like opposed she is when really she should. I understand like maybe keeping it close to your chest and like
Which she
not
could
letting
have
it
been,
out.
because it is in Hunt's point of view. So we don't really know what she was thinking.
Maybe.
I don't know. I don't know if we ever get into more of this because we haven't finished the second book yet, but maybe we'll see.
Maybe.
So Hunt kind of starts to recognize himself in Briggs, and he kind of starts to wonder if he was that fanatical for the cause. And he's a bit worried that Bryce will hear what Briggs is saying and like kind of connect the dots that this is how Hunt used to feel and kind of put them both in the same kind of box.
Mm.
Um, and they end up leaving and they go back to Bryce's apartment and they go and sit on the couch and they're either watching a Sunball game or a bachelorette type show.
Mm-hmm.
And Bryce kind of like lies over at Hunt, and in her head, she calls him pretty, which is new, but he's wearing a hat now. And Kristen, you know how I love to fall for a guy in a hat.
Yeah,
So
it's legitimately a problem. Like you could literally see like a 5 and be like, "Oh, he's a 5." And then put a hat on him and all of a sudden he's a 10. I don't
Yep.
know what it is with you and hats, but you do have a thing.
Yeah, it's the hockey hair. Which
Well,
is such a phrase. But
but
it's
like for those of you that don't know, when you think of hockey hair, think of like longish hair in like hair past the ears, we're talking, and then greasy and sweaty and slicked back because it's greasy and sweaty and it needs to have a hat on so that people don't see how greasy and sweaty it is. And for some reason, you like that.
yeah, but it's also like the hat goes on and then the little pieces stick out underneath the hat. It's just, I can't explain it. It's fine.
Hey man, it's what you're into. You're allowed to have,
Yeah.
uh,
My,
you're allowed.
my partner's COVID hair is a-okay long because it can turn into hockey hair, so it's fine.
It's all right. My husband grew a man bun for COVID, and I'm loving my life.
Amazing.
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah, no, me too.
um, so they kind of have a bit of a conversation on the couch then, and Hunt tells her he was basically tortured for 9 years before he was finally used for hunting demons, which is like his day job now, we'll call it, because his night
Hmm.
job is just killing whoever Micah wants him to. But he hadn't seen sunlight in 9 years. So, like, no wonder he's a little fucked up. Um, she kind of holds his hand and reassures him a bit that he's not, she doesn't see him like she saw Briggs, and she understands kind of why he did what he did, which you'd think she'd have a bit of sympathy for Briggs too, like you were saying before. It
Yeah.
really, it's just that she doesn't know him well.
Mm.
If 10 years from now, if Briggs came back and was hot as balls, she'd be like, She'd be
I
like, "You're not like him at all."
I understand.
If he put a hat on, he'd be from 5 to a 10 too. She kind of teases him about his hat because I guess it's a new thing. And he puts it on her head. And we all know what it means when a guy puts a hat on your head. It means he has a crush
Yeah,
on you.
yeah. It's
Very
100%
true.
true. Or when the girl takes the hat and puts it on her head.
And he doesn't get pissed then.
Yes, yeah. Same thing.
Exactly.
It's code.
It's a rule in our world, so I think it's definitely a rule in theirs too.
Yeah, it's translating.
Yeah. So they obviously are like talking about a lot of stuff, and they start to think about the horn a bit more, and they're wondering, even though there was a blackout when the horn was stolen, Luna's horn, like maybe there was a sound recording and that could have told us something because Danica was nearby when the horn was stolen, so maybe something's going on there. And when it was looked at 2 years ago, maybe it wasn't looked at by the right person. Declan is what
Yeah,
that means.
yeah. So Declan is one of Ruhn's like BFFs, and he's a whiz with tech.
Yes. So the next day, Bryce and Hunt end up at a sniper gallery to meet with Ruhn, Tristan, and Declan. And basically to ask Declan if he can look into the sound footage by the temple during the blackout. So they're obviously practicing at the sniper gallery, which makes sense. Why else would you be there? And Ruhn kind of goads Bryce into shooting. And he has to know how good she is because he asks her to put on a show for Athlar. So she does. And he really watches it like it's a show. He's like watching her like she's stripping or something. He's
Yeah,
loving it.
it's true. He literally like she's like it's all I think it said that it was like slow motion for her to like put the gun together and like load it and like
Mm-hmm.
it was a very like for him it was
Sensual.
a yeah, it was erotic.
Yeah. He's hella turned on. So she shoots 3 shots basically into one tiny imperfect hole on the target's heart, which is like very badass. And also
Mhm.
kind of a sign. Like if a girl can shoot you right in the heart 3 times with barely any deviation, maybe you should be careful.
Yeah, be nice to her.
Exactly. I remember the first time I read the book, I kind of thought that this was a bit cliche, like kind of like a girl among the boys, like showing off how good she is. But like reading it again, you kind of get back to kind of how protective her mom is. And she did have a sharpshooter for a stepdad slash dad. So it does make more sense. And I definitely appreciated it more this time around than I did the first time.
Yeah, I mean it obviously it's still tropey, right? Like
Mm-hmm. Oh, for
of
sure.
course, of course her dad taught her everything she needed to know. Like
Mm-hmm.
my dad's a really great sailor and can sail boats, but like I don't know anything about sailing boats. He didn't teach me any of that.
Mm-hmm.
So like I don't think that just because your father is good at something, they automatically teach you.
No. Yeah. No, that's for sure. But like maybe if sailing was what won you a war against, I don't know, maybe he would have taught you.
This is gonna win the war. How to tie this knot.
Well, I'd probably be more interested in learning how to shoot guns than tying knots, so understandable.
Yeah.
um, when Bryce is done shooting, um, Bryce and Hunt kind of have a moment. You're thinking about shooting as an innuendo? Because I wasn't until you left.
Well, yeah, they're shooting their loads.
Oh
Like,
god.
I know it's a really crude way to put it, but they are.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I was just gonna say they basically have a moment and make sex eyes at each other. And this is while he shoots his bullet through the same hole.
That her
Sexual
bullets.
innuendo, anyone?
Yeah.
And the sexual tension is sky high.
Yeah. Like, he doesn't even look at the target, does he? Like, he's
No.
staring right at her, and he shoots his load right into her hole. And I'm talking bullets here, people. Like,
Yes, you are. So because we can't let the sexual tension get too high, there's another murder now. So Bryce kind of starts to have another panic attack because obviously, as we kind of talked about before, she has a bit of PTSD and she's also feeling guilty again about being here, doing something that they enjoy and like having a moment when somebody's literally being murdered. So Hunt realizes this time and kind of helps her through it. They match each other, kind of like their bullets going through the same hole. Um, they both have trauma and pain, and they both accept each other with the trauma and pain. So it's like a bonding moment.
yeah, I find that that's something that a lot of people gloss over, like, especially in literature, but even in real life too. It's like when people are traumatized and experiencing pain or loss or whatever, you like, as a fellow human, you want to sympathize and empathize with them, but at the same time, you want them to go back to being the way they were before, like, as soon as possible.
Yes.
Right? Like, you want them to act normal. And for a lot of people, like, that's not going to happen, right? Like, maybe never, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's something that they do a really good job of doing for each other, is accepting the person with, um, you know,
The
like,
trauma, where they are.
yeah, like, they obviously they didn't really know each other before the trauma, so it's not like they can say, "Well, you're not acting the way you used to." But, like, there's also no pressure to act the way they used to with each other.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, it's good writing, I think.
Yes, I agree. Definitely. So they go to the murder scene, and the person that was murdered is a guard from Luna's temple who had also been working the night the horn was stolen. So everybody murdered so far kind of was there that night, except for obviously the pack. But Danica was there, and we're all assuming that she was the main target. And the vampire, Maximus Tertian, was also not there. So, but everybody else that's been murdered had been at the temple the night that the horn was stolen. So it's something, it's a clue, it's a lead, maybe. There's something going on with that for sure.
I think they sort of know for sure now that, like, it's all connected,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, they know 100% now that the Kristallos demon attacks are connected to Luna's horn in some way, and the disappearance, the stealing of the horn is significant as well.
Yeah. Uh, they kind of realize that the demon must know where every camera in the city is because it's never really been captured on camera, which means that it must be summoned by someone with high clearance since there's like a whole lot of cameras around that most people wouldn't know where they were. So you'd have to have a high clearance to know where they are. Um, so obviously, it was summoned by somebody who knows something about security. There's also a pattern to the murders, and Bryce kind of figures this out. She figures out that all the locations where the murders took place are on ley lines. So the person summoning the demon could have used the energy there on these ley lines to summon it.
So the ley lines essentially are like, it's a way to connect the magic around the city. right? So it's
Mhm.
how the magic runs, like, from place to place.
Yeah. And ley lines are kind of big in a lot of different fantasy books.
Yes, 100%.
Ruhn and Declan and Flynn are leaving, and Flynn blows Bryce a kiss. So Hunt kind of asks if anything had ever happened between them. And she admits that she used to think she'd end up with Flynn when she was a teenager. And she doesn't mention it, but she thinks about the time that Danica hooked up with Flynn. And it kind of makes you wonder if it could put a bit of a wrench in the relationship at all. We don't really hear anything about it, but it's definitely interesting to think about in a relationship with a friend. So, Hunt also shares a bit, and he says that none of his hookups since Shahar have meant anything, and Shahar ruined him for anyone else, which is an aggressive thing to say, but like I get what he's saying and why he's saying it.
Um, I find that really, like, again, we're talking about a different sort of um we're talking about a different sort of society, I guess, in a different world where the creatures are different. But like, can you imagine, so like, somebody ruining you for life for like 800 years or
Yeah.
five, you know what I mean? Like, that's a long time to ruin. Like, I get somebody being the love of your life 100%, and I get the tragic way the tragic way that she was killed.
Hmm.
But, and I'm sure it just has to do too with the fact that he's in a bad place and all that, like, he's a slave, so it's sort of always on his mind. But like, she's ruined you for anybody else? Like, really? Like,
Yeah.
how does he even do it then?
Yeah,
Like,
no.
how does he have sex? If she's ruined if she's ruined him for anyone else, how does he, like, perform?
he's he's being a bit melodramatic here. If we're being honest. Um like I get what he's saying, but I think it's one of those, like, if you can't love yourself, nobody can love you. Like, he is in such a dark depression, and I'm sure he's there because of everything that happened. And yeah, I guess because of Shahar too, obviously. And maybe that's how she ruined him, because now he's very depressed about her dying.
But like, do you think their sex was that good?
No. No, but it's not even that. It's like she died. Also, they lost a war. Like, separately, these are very terrible things. I think that he's just extremely depressed about many different things that, like, he just is not, he's not ready for anything yet.
Yeah.
Um they talk about Bryce's worst hookup ever next, which is she says that a vampire suggested eating while eating, which is kinky, question mark. Um I think it happened in another popular book series, which, like, maybe we'll get to that
Eventually.
sometime.
Yeah. If anybody is confused, he's a vampire. No, I do, you know what? I don't even want to explain it. I feel like that just goes too far.
I think people can understand it. This is a new adult book. He's sexually eating while vampire eating. I think there's explanation enough.
I think it sort of depends, like, what time of the month is it when he's eating while eating?
No. It's not that blood. I think he's just like leeching on with his teeth and sucking blood while he's licking her clit. Good. Um,
Okay.
so kind of like we said, Hunt feels like he can never move on from loving Shahar, and it's because she gave up so much for him, and it's really even more obvious here that he feels guilt and depression, and it's just he's in a bad place, and that's why he's feeling all of this. But kind of while he's saying this, he realizes that he maybe has feelings for Bryce. We don't really know what he realizes. He kind of starts to say something to Bryce about how it doesn't mean ... but Sabine shows up.
Yeah, like it doesn't mean that I might not want something with you.
Ever. Yeah.
But he doesn't get a chance to say that because of stupid Sabine.
Yes. So she shows up, and she's demanding for the sword again from Bryce, which is like, it's kind of like old news. It's like, do you have a new record? Because this one's been played.
Yeah, it's like, we get it. You want the sword. Bryce, as far as we know, Bryce don't have it.
Yeah,
Like, it's been 2 years. Move on.
exactly. So Hunt is like, fuck this, we're out of here. And he picks her up, and they
Yeah.
cuddle along the way back home and fly back to her apartment.
Because, like, obviously, and again, another book where I don't understand how people can be mean and expect that to work on getting something you want.
Yes.
Like, Sabine is like, you give me the sword, you bitch. And it's like, do you really think that's going to work? Like, try being nice. Try killing them with kindness instead.
Yeah,
But, like, obviously, Hunt's gonna, like, zoom her away when somebody is, like, yelling at them and calling them down to the dirt.
exactly.
Anyway.
So they're back. Yeah, so they're back at the apartment, and Bryce gets a call from Declan. He already has the sound footage from when the horn was stolen during the blackout. So Bryce runs out and knocks on Hunt's door to his bedroom so that he can listen to the call. And he comes out, and he's shirtless, and he's apparently hot to trot. So
I mean, obviously.
apparently,
I mean,
yes.
do you know any assassin who's not hot to trot? Sort of it's like a
A
requirement.
requirement, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. Yeah. So Declan tells us that someone must have swapped the footage of the temple, because you can clearly hear that in this sound bite that is supposed to be the temple, you can hear people touching the disc, and the disc isn't near the temple. So it's clear that it's not the right footage. So they have a look at who investigated this at the time of basically when the horn was stolen, and who could have changed it. And the only person that could have possibly made the change is Sabine. And she was just a huge bitch. So we should all point at her for the murder, is what is happening now. They talk through Sabine murdering her daughter, and like what that, like how it was possible, what that would mean. And Hunt kind of thinks back to what Sabine had said when she burst into the interrogation room when they had Bryce there. And Sabine said that it's Danica's fault because she couldn't keep her mouth shut. And we don't really know what she was talking about then. So it makes a bit of sense, like if she was saying something, but the one thing that doesn't really make sense is that it would seem that the person who stole the horn and the person that's searching for the horn are separate people. And they're kind of talking about it like Sabine is both.
Yeah. I guess they need a suspect, and she's
Mm-hmm.
like acting the most like suspicious, I guess.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's the same way as, like, you know how on all the criminal shows they have to find their patsy first, the one that they all look at and they're like, it's definitely him, and they get a new
Mm-hmm.
piece of evidence and they're like, no, it's not. Wait, and they completely pivot.
Yes. Yeah.
It it's this point of the book. Like, this is our
A
this
Patsy
is our
moment.
this is our patsy moment.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And she acted like an asshole all through this part and continues to later.
Yeah.
Uh, and they kind of think it through, and there's a real possibility that she could be working with Sandriel to get Sandriel Mike a seat and to make Sabine the head of all shifters. So like there is some motive there, realistically, I guess, for the murders to be starting again, to make Michael look bad, that kind of thing. Um, so Bryce kind of at this point is like, I'm never going to get to sleep. I need to go for a run. So it's like 1 a.m, and she decides to throw on her running gear. At least she puts on her running gear this time instead of running in a dress,
Mm.
and jets out. And Hunt has no choice but to go with her. She ends up like tweaking her leg basically, and it hurts for the last part of the run, and she's limping badly by the end of it. And Hunt can obviously tell, and he asks her about it, and she lies and says that she's had it checked out. And it's kind of another way that she's punishing herself for being alive when Danica is not. So I guess
Yeah.
it's the next day now, and Ruhn's point of view is where we are. And he decides to consult a Medowitch, since they kind of talk about the horn like it's alive. And the Medowitch he goes to see is the same one that he talked to at the murder last night. And he finds her beautiful. And she's graceful as a queen, he says. Wink, wink. They have lunch together, and she says there may have been new technologies developed that could repair the horn. And she says she hopes to see him again. And there's a bit of a mutual attraction that I kind of felt there. Except for Ruhn didn't even ask her name because he's apparently an asshole. And then he
Well,
just leaves.
I took it as he was like so sort of one, he was so sort of single-minded on his task. He was just trying
Mm,
to ask her like probing questions about the horn and how it could possibly be repaired.
hmm
Like if there is new technology out there to help repair the horn.
Yeah.
And then too, he was so like awestruck by her beauty and intelligence that he just forgot.
Yeah, that's fair. But I think this is like the third time that they've talked. You just like think he'd be like,
By the way,
hey, what's your name? So we're back to Hunt and Brace, and Isaiah shows up to say that Vic has found something on the cameras. And Hunt kind of has a little aside conversation with Isaiah and tells him that if there's anything he needs help with Sandriel being there, like just to let him know. And Isaiah is kind of shocked at this offer of help. And it kind of, Hunt kind of realizes that he's maybe never offered to help anyone before, and kind of how sad that is, which is just a moment showing that maybe something is changing inside of Hunt at this point. It's also raining outside, which it didn't call for in the forecast. And apparently it's illegal to change the weather, which is interesting in itself.
I love that they have to qualify that.
So they all fly to go see Vic, and Bryce finally opens her eyes when she's in Hunt's arms, and it's kind of a cute moment that they have flying to the lab.
Like a Titanic moment. I'm flying.
Yeah, or a magic carpet ride. At the lab, Vic shows them that she found a dip in temperature, and she has a photo of the Kristallos' demon's toes from the night before. So
I just keep thinking like of a picture with like little tiny toes in the
I
little corner.
know. I know. But the toes are near, get this, Sabine's compound territory,
What?
right? So, what does that mean? Um, so they don't know if maybe it was following an old scent. There are no bodies. So obviously no bodies, no crimes. Um, there Yeah, so they don't know if it was summoned for some reason or what's going on. Like why is it going around there? Maybe Sabine summoned it. We don't know. They end up back, obviously, at Bryce's work, and they have to take Syrinx home before they go on with their investigation. And there's kind of a cute moment where they're trying to force Syrinx outside into the rain, and Hunt kind of like picks him up with his wind and forces him outside, and then scoops both him and Bryce up and flies them back to the apartment to drop Syrinx off. It was just a sweet moment where you can see that Hunt is very nice to anybody that is like, I don't want to say lower than him, but anybody that's also a slave or something like that. Yeah. He's just a decent guy.
Yeah.
So then Bryce and Hunt go to check out the place where they saw the talons, the toes on the camera, and they realize that the sewer is also near all the ley lines. So maybe the demon wasn't going near the ley lines. Maybe it was just getting around in the sewer. So they decide to talk to the water folk the next day and kind of ask them if they've noticed anything. They go home and they both shower separately,
Rat.
unfortunately.
Darn.
And Hunt runs out of soap, so goes into the linen closet to try to get some more. And he pulls a box off of like the top shelf that I don't even know if Bryce could reach it without her highest shoes, but he pulls it down and he finds her Jelly Jubilee toy. And the way she's kind of describing it, it kind of reminds me of My Little Pony, but he for sure thought that it was a sex toy.
Yeah, it's sort of like what I think of. It's like they're collectibles. So like even the way things are now, how you can get like a common or a rare or an ultra
Mm-hmm.
rare. So apparently Jelly Jubilee was like the hot toy when she was a kid. All the kids had them and she wanted one, so she got one and she ended up managing to pull Jelly Jubilee and like it was her prized possession as a child. So
Yeah.
obviously she still has it in her closet. Why not?
Yeah. And he obviously just saw something purple and sparkly and was like, I bet she keeps her sex toys in the linen closet because that's where we all keep them. And she tells him next time if he wants to find that, he should look in her left dresser instead. So,
I mean, it's obviously the more logical place to keep it.
exactly. But here we are.
Here we are. Anyway, it was a cute moment actually, and they had a good giggle over it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it actually, I feel like they made that scene a little bit sexier than what it sounds like.
Yes.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, and
She runs out
obviously,
in her towel and she's like, "What's happening?"
yeah,
And he's like, "What is this?" And she's like, "Oh, it's my toys, but not
yeah.
those."
But then too, like, she's like, "Oh, have a look in my left dresser instead if you ever want to find those toys." And like
Mm-hmm.
now all of a sudden we get references throughout the rest of the book when he's like thinking about her left-hand side drawer, like
Yeah.
it's just a little comical and a little sexy at the same time.
Yes.
Um so the next day they don't waste any time. They decide they're going to go to the underwater city. The Istros River sort of runs uh, the south end of Crescent City. Like it sort of runs a little bit through. It cuts off the bone quarter from the rest of the city. So
Mm-hmm.
it sort of runs through the south, um, like up through a little bit and cuts the bone quarter off from the rest of the city. So it's like it is a part of the city. It's not sort of like a harbor, right? Like it is, it's sort of more central than that.
Yeah.
But it seems like so there's a whole other city underwater in the river.
Yeah.
Uh, it's ruled by a river queen, which sounds super fun. And we sort of talked a little bit about the underwater house a little bit. So yeah, so there's a river queen. Um, so apparently, like, obviously it's underwater, so a normal person like you or I, could not just decide to go. We would obviously need an invitation, and there is a glass submarine that goes up and down once a day to let people take a ride down there, and they have like special buildings that have air pockets for people that are coming to visit. So it's
Mm.
nice. It sounds like a fun place to go. Hunt knows a mer, so it's sort of their shortened term for like a mer person, and that's who they're going to go meet there, and they're going to ask if they've noticed anything suspicious coming like in and out of the water. So his name is Therian Kitos, and he is another big old flirt. And it seems like a lot of the guys in this book are big old flirts.
Yeah, I
And it's
also think
just
it's because Bryce is hot as anything too.
mm, right. He is the captain of the River Queen's like intelligence sort of division. So essentially, he's a spy. Um, they have little cute otters that I think we like maybe mentioned them before. So their otters are their little messengers. So they have little bags and they like go up on land and run and deliver letters and then they come back to the water. And they're like little postmen and they're so cute and I want one.
Same. That's all I want in life. A little otter
A little
to
otter
deliver my
mail
mail.
a little otter mailman. Anyway, we learn that Hunt and Therian know each other because they worked a serial killer case last year. And unfortunately, Therian's sister was one of the victims. I feel like this is a little breadcrumb for a future, like either a future book or a novella or something.
Hmm. Maybe
We
if there's
also,
one about this house, because obviously this book is about earth and blood, and the next one is about sky and breath. Maybe water
yeah,
house book will have something to do with that.
yeah, maybe. Um, so I guess they sort of say like, they sort of explain their situation to Therian. He agrees to be on the lookout. That's that. So then they start like going away. Um, they have a little chat, and Bryce tells Hunt that the jacket she always wears, she literally wears the same jacket every day. It was Danica's leather jacket. And it says, "Through love, all is possible" on the back.
Mm.
The tattoo Bryce got when she was drunk with Danica says the same thing. "Through love, all is possible." And apparently, that's also what the Oracle told Danica back when she was a teenager and had to go see the Oracle. So, "Through love, all is possible" is sort of our overarching theme
Mm.
to Bryce and Danica's relationship in a way.
It
It's
kind of
sort
makes
of,
you wonder. Yeah, it kind of makes you wonder if that's why Danica was more wary about saying love to people because this is what the Oracle said to her.
hmm, could be.
Interesting.
Um, there's like major. I know we've talked about it, but there's like a major sexual tension in like it's like palpable. They're like just over the top. They're teasing each other and they're like examining each other's like parts. Okay, no, not like that. But like, they're staring at each other's like she stares at his arms and like imagining him like, you know, wrapping himself around her and like then he stares at her legs and wonders what it'd be like if her legs were like wrapped around his waist. Like they're staring at each other and imagining what they're going to do with each other, but they're not actually acting on any of it.
Yeah,
So it's like major sexual tension.
cut it with a knife.
Cut it with a knife because they decide that Sabine is looking pretty guilty. So they legally, because she sort of has all this power, right? Her dad is the sort of the head of all the shifters, head of the werewolves. Um, so they know that they really can't haul her in legally to question her. So they're like, well, let's just go visit her instead. Like like it's just so ridiculous. They like
Mhm.
it's just such a silly idea. Like, oh, we can't question her. Let's go talk to her privately. Like, come on.
Like literally the last scene, she was yelling at you.
Yes. So they decide to walk on over to Moonwood, which is the wolves' sort of section of town. And um, we sort of get a little bit more now about why all the wolves like hate Bryce with such a vengeance, because it seems like everybody has isolated her, right? Like
Mhm.
Fury won't talk to her. Juniper is like sort of too busy all the time. Her parents don't really live nearby. Her brother and her were in a fight. It just seems like everybody, like through for their own reasons, like isolated her, the wolves included. Um, the pack, as they're walking, the pack that replaced Danica's pack, which is like the super powerful pack, like they were really good at keeping everyone safe. So the pack that replaced them apparently is not nearly as talented. The alpha, her name is Emily. So she hates Bryce with a passion. And upon their entry into Moonwood, like they're hanging around, and Emily immediately calls her a slut. And like they're all sort of like giving her hate stares, giving her cat calls. Like none of the wolves like her. So we sort of figure out why now. Because remember, at the beginning of the book, they told her, like, don't even come to Danica's funeral. You're not wanted there. The reason we're getting now is the night that she was out partying, she had sex in the bathroom with some stranger. Um, and she texted Danica about it. And she said, sort of like, I just had sex with someone in the bathroom. Don't tell Connor, or like something to that effect. Like, do you
Yeah.
think he'd be mad or something?
I think she just
Be-
said don't tell Connor because like they weren't together. He
no,
said go have fun.
yeah,
Like I
yeah,
would if I were her, I would have fought back tooth and nail on this. I'd be like, I don't know. Especially for how the world is,
yeah,
where people are sleeping in that club with each other all the time. I don't know. I just feel like
yeah.
they're being harsh.
Anyway, so bottom line, she was very messed up. She was had a lot of
Hmm.
alcohol, a lot of drugs in her system. She had sex that night. She earlier in the day had agreed to finally go out with Connor. Those all those texts that she sent to Danica, like I just had sex with some guy in the bathroom. Don't tell Connor. All of those texts were leaked, like her phone got hacked, and those texts were leaked to everybody, like to the media and everything. And the wolves were pissed because uh in their mind, wolves like are very loyal creatures, right? They revere
Hmm.
loyalty. And Connor sort of, not in an alpha hole way, but like everyone sort of assumed, like everyone knew they had a thing for each other.
Hmm.
She tried to sort of keep it close to the vest, but everyone knew he had a thing for her. Everyone could see she had a thing for him. Everyone was just like, it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
So they all sort of assumed that her and Connor were going to be together and that they were meant for each other.
Yeah.
And her finally agreeing to this one date meant that they belonged to each other.
Yeah.
And the fact that she then um like slept with someone else, it was like she cheated on him, and you don't do that to your mate, I guess, in their minds.
Yeah.
um we also run into Ethan, who is Connor's little brother. And if you remember back in our first episode of this book, we discussed how Ethan was Bryce's favorite person after Danica.
Hmm.
But now he's grown up the past couple years. He hates Bryce too, and his whole life changed after Connor died. He quit playing professional sumball. He joined the the pack, the new pack that was replacing the pack of devils, and he is now Emily's second in command. He's also the one who texted her and told her not to bother coming to the funeral. So, like, there's a lot like going on, but
Mm-hmm.
I find this so friggin' unfair. Like, so she agreed to one date, and all of a sudden, her life is over. Like, they haven't even had the date yet. They
Yeah.
just agreed to, and it one not even a date. Like, agreed to pizza.
Yes.
And like all of a sudden she's honor bound. It just bothers me because how does everybody know through the leaked texts that the sex she had in the club was consensual? Because she was like partying hard. She had so many drugs and so much alcohol in her system. Like that might not have been consensual sex.
Yeah.
So like the fact that everybody is villainizing her, like grow up.
Mm-hmm.
It's sex.
Also,
Ev-
they agreed to less than one date.
yeah. Friggin'
Like,
pizza.
yeah.
Anyway.
And this is what she was worried about. This is literally why she didn't want to say yes. And then it
Yeah.
happened anyway. And she got zero benefits,
Yeah.
zero Connor.
Yeah.
Not even a small piece because he was all pulp.
Oh,
Sorry. Sorry,
too
sorry, sorry.
soon. Too soon.
It's been 2 years.
Anyway, so they do go question Sabine. Uh, they figure out, or they confirm, I guess, that Sabine was lying about Danica being at the temple the night it was stolen. So she was not supposed to have been there, but apparently she was. Um, so they sort of get that piece of the puzzle. And, Sabine acts like Sabine and acts like a big old B word.
Hmm.
And that's essentially, like, I feel like it sort of killed that. It kills that portion of their investigation. Like, so they sort of figure out that Sabine is lying about Danica being at the temple. She wasn't supposed to be there. She was stationed a couple blocks away, but apparently she was there. So they are very suspicious about it. They're like, it's sort of their an extra oomph to their investigation that, they sort of think that they're closer to uncovering that it was Sabine who was responsible. Um, but that's sort of all they get. And Bryce just wants to leave. Like, being there triggers her so bad, and she becomes this different person. Like, she's
Hmm.
not the confident, like sarcastic person she is normally.
Hmm.
And like all of her confidence goes away, and she just like retreats into this, like, it's so weird seeing her like so dejected, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And like the visit, it was just terrible. So they go to leave, and so like she sort of says that while Bryce wasn't a wolf, the pack of devils was essentially her family, and she lost it all in one night. And like she used to hang out in Moonwood all the time. She used to help babysit the cubs, like the little wolves. Like they all looked up to Danica, and like they all knew Bryce. So she like literally didn't just lose her immediate family of the pack of devils. She also lost like this entire sort of village, this community that she had. And they refuse to like look at her. They literally go from including her and loving her to like literally thinking she is less than a piece of trash. Like
Hmm.
they all despise her. And it's like, it's one of those things. It's like, it's a book, but it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Like she literally has had two people in her entire life, her mom and her stepdad. Then all of a sudden she meets Danica and gets this whole community of people that love and accept her. especially since her Fae father refused to accept her.
When she
And
was like a preteen and a vulnerable age.
yeah, anyway, it was just such a heartbreaking moment.
Mm-hmm.
And on the way out, Ethan says that she didn't deserve Connor. I'm like, what a terrible, vindictive asshole thing to say.
Yeah.
Like,
If you
it
can't
just,
say something nice, don't say anything at all.
but like, not
Like,
even that. Like, literally one drunken mistake, and they are all turning into vindictive assholes. And it's like, what kind of people are you? Like, really, what kind of people are you? They are
also,
all terrible people for me. All of them are
yeah.
awful.
But they, like, especially Ethan, like, he knew her before all this happened. She was the same person the week before. She just hadn't agreed to a pizza date. So why why would this one, like, I wouldn't even call it a mistake. Why would this one tryst, if you will, like change who she is as a person? It really shouldn't. And obviously, like, his pain over his loss is fucking with him, which is like it makes sense, but it's not at all fair to Bryce.
No. Um, Bryce admits to Hunt that the big reason that Emily hates her is because Emily had a thing for Connor.
Mm.
And then the text came out, and, it was sort of, I guess, like I said, that everybody knew that they were a thing and going to be a thing. I feel like maybe everybody knew except Emily.
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
Because like this is her the moment that she sort of realized that she never had a chance with him.
Hmm.
And so like, she it took her anger out on Bryce. Apparently Bryce was tormented mercilessly in the weeks after Danica's death. So like, not only is she dealing with the death of her like best friend in the entire world and all of her friends, she's then getting tormented. Like, different wolf packs were making up lyrics and like making songs about it and would sing them to her in the street. Some of them even sent printouts of the lyrics to her house in a fake CD jacket. Like, it's next level bullying, like,
Hmm.
shit. And like, it was so bad that she became depressed and she debated killing herself. And like, that blows my mind that the character we have, who is so confident, so like sort of cocky in a way, and like so sure of
Full of life.
herself. And yes, she's full of life. And it seems like up until, she was enjoying life.
Hmm.
And the fact that she was so depressed that she was going to kill herself. And it was heartbreaking because, so it said she was on the roof holding on to the railing. And all of a sudden, Juniper called her. And she says she doesn't know how Juniper knew, but Juniper called her and kept her talking on the phone until she got to the apartment. And she stayed with Bryce in the apartment for 3 days
Hmm.
until she was sure that she wasn't going to kill herself anymore. So, like, can you imagine, like, the sort of torment and and just like, just I can't imagine how people can be so cruel.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
awful. And it just like, it seems it's very similar to me today. It like sort of draws a parallel to the vilification online today. Like, everybody doesn't hesitate to say whatever it is they think, and they think it's okay to say it just because it's online.
I
You know what I
wonder.
mean? It's like
Yeah.
a keyboard warrior sort of scenario.
Yeah, it kind of makes you wonder how Sarah J Maas has maybe dealt with some of the things that people have said to her, and maybe if this could be a parallel. And like, obviously, I have no idea in any way, but there's obviously people that say bad shit about her writing online, and it just kind of makes you think.
Yeah. It definitely makes you or it definitely makes me like I'm not a big criticizer online anyway. I'm not
Mm.
like going around to random celebrity Facebooks or anything and being like, you suck.
Because celebrities are actually on their own Facebooks anymore. But
Is
we
anybody
get
on
you.
Facebook anymore?
Exactly.
Uh but like so I'm not super into that anyway, but it definitely makes you sort of second guess what it is that you are saying and writing, because like it can cause really severe emotional damage. And
Hmm.
like, you've no idea what's happening in a person's life. So like, I guess what I always tell my students is try and be kind, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, um this whole situation sort of, so she tells Hunt all of these things, and he's sort of beginning to understand Bryce and Danica's dynamic, their relationship. Um, he manages to watch the footage of her chasing the Kristallos demon, and he marvels, he says, at how close they were. The fact that she would run tearing after this gigantic demon that just tore all these people apart, but she tore after it anyway because it hurt her friend.
Hmm.
And like she was so messed up on drugs and everything, but she still chased it down. So he really sort of, I think, um, gains a lot of respect for her in these moments here. So Hunt decides sort of after, I guess he felt sort of inspired by Bryce and Danica's friendship, because he decides to go for a drink with the rest of his like squad members, his triari. So Bryce is sort of like left alone. So she sort of starts to go a bit like stir crazy, like she can't stay in her apartment by herself. It's too quiet, she says. So she goes out for a walk, obviously not realizing that she's obviously not really alone. Hunt obviously had somebody watching her. The person who was watching her calls and says, hey, like, she's going for a walk. So then he leaves. It's like she couldn't give him any time to hang out with his buddies. Um,
Too needy.
right? So he goes to meet her at the garden where she stopped, and she's just sitting. And, they flirt a little bit, and they have these like longing looks at each other, and like they're staring into each other's eyes, and then one of them flicks their eyes down to the other's mouth and stares at it, and then back up to their eyes, and it's like a suggestive thing, like I want to kiss you. And they almost kiss, like they start to move into each other to kiss, and all of a sudden, bam, Kristallos demon, it jumps out and attacks. So obviously, Hunt does what Hunt does. He protects Bryce by pushing her out of the way, and he grapples with this like huge wormy thing with hands, with legs, uh
Toes, even.
toes, even toesies. uh and he ends up stabbing it in the brain, which is nice. And then Bryce shoots it a couple of times,
Yes.
just for good measure, right? To make sure we've really killed it. Because we all
Fair.
know a stab to the brain's not always reliable.
Very true.
Um, After sort of they deal with the aftermath, it was a very quick battle, but Hunt is hurt and he's not healing. And they sort of start freaking out. So the rest of the Triari show up at this point. So like Isaiah and Vic and all them, they show up, and then Micah shows up. I don't know how everybody was alerted so quickly, but they were. They all show
Hmm.
up, and everyone's sort of like, yes, now we have finally have the Kristallos demon. Like we find every more people have seen it, so we can like identify. Well, not identify it, but we can, like now we have it. So this is great. Now we actually know what it looks like. Uh, but Micah, he's like, I'm afraid the story's going to get out. I don't want anybody knowing about this demon attack in my territory. So he destroys the demon body. He destroys the body of the Kristallos demon without even like asking. He just does it. And like we've said that Micah is sort of a really fair. He's like less of a douchebag than the other Archangel leaders, but he's being a real douchebag and a real prick at this point. Like they're all sort of like, "Hey, like why can't we keep it?" And he's like, "Shut up. This is my decision. Like you guys leave me alone. I'm decide things." And he's just being a bit of a dick.
It sounded like you were talking about like a stray cat. Why can't we keep it?
Can't we keep the Kristallos demon body?
Please,
Please.
Dad, please.
Uh, so I guess Hunt is still hurt. He's still not healing. So a med witch comes by and fixes him up. So I guess the Kristallos demon bit his forearm and it's poisonous. So the poison is in his arm and it's a nullifying poison. So the poison nullifies magic. So she has to use poison sucking leeches uh, on the wound, and they suck the poison out of his wound. And it after they get all the poison out, his arm starts to heal right away. They decide to go back to the apartment. I'm a little surprised at this. Like, I'm sort of surprised that the med witch was just like, leeches on, suck, 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 leeches off. Okay, go home. Like, they literally
Mhm.
just were attacked by a demon. And everyone's like, yeah, you guys are okay to fly home.
Fair enough.
So, Hunt and Bryce are cleared to fly and like they're going to go back to the apartment. And all of a sudden, they start like, it's raining and they were flying in the rain and it was all wet and like hot. They like you would think that they would be a little bit more traumatized than they are. Anyway, they so they land on the roof and all of a sudden like they they're sort of just like comforting each other at first, sort of like, I'm glad you're not dead and like it was a really crappy
Sorry.
night. Yeah, like they do say, I'm glad you're not dead. And they're just sort of like hugging on the roof. But then all of a sudden, like the hug, the just like, hey, like I'm glad you're
Platonic
alive.
hug.
Yeah. They're like they start nuzzling.
Hmm.
And like it's really hot. Like it's hot. Uh, so it's just to read a little bit because I actually had to note it down.
Mhm.
So he couldn't tell if his name was a warning or a request or something more. Didn't care as he grazed his nose against the rain slit column of her neck. Fuck, she smelled good. He did it again, unable to help himself or get enough of that scent. She tipped her chin up slightly, just enough to expose more of her neck to him. Hell yes. Hunt almost groaned the words as he let himself nuzzle into that soft, delicious neck, as greedy as a fucking vampire to be there, smell her, taste her. It overrode every instinct, every pained memory, every vow he'd ever sworn. So it's really hot, but
Mhm.
nuzzling is, I don't know, maybe it does it for some people. It doesn't really do that for me. Like, and I'm wondering, like, maybe it's a fae thing. Maybe it's like a veneer or magic creature thing because of their heightened sense of smell. And, like, it sort of mentions all the time in this series that, you know, they can smell arousal. So, like, if somebody's turned on, they can smell it. So, like, is that part of it? Is that making him even more turned on? Like, what is it?
Might be. Makes more sense.
And, like, it's sort of one of those scenes where, like, yes, it's gonna happen. They're rain-soaked, they just been through tragedy, they're nuzzling, like,
This
they
is a new
want
adult
it.
book.
Yeah, you're, like, waiting for it, and then all of a sudden, uh, we get a a little mood killer, I guess we'll say, and Sabine shows up on the frickin' roof with a gun pointed at him. Like, she's just up there with a gun pointed at them, and, like, obviously, they're, like, entwined, and, like, I'm sure he's still a little bit hard,
Hard.
and she's essentially telling them to back off and, like, saying she's like, "Just stop. Like, get out of it. Stop trying to solve this case." And she's threatening them, and they're like, "Yeah, well, we know you killed Danica." Sort of like sort of very childish in a way. And like
Hmm.
I if they actually did think she killed him or sorry, killed her, why would you reveal it? Right? Like it just seems
Yeah.
like you shouldn't actually reveal that stuff if you really think that that's the case.
Especially with a gun to your head.
Yeah.
Like, she's going to kill you. Bryce hasn't made the drop.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to antagonize her more.
Yeah. So she comes back and says, "No, I didn't kill Danica. I was protecting her by switching the footage and um I was protecting her because Danica stole the horn." And that she says everything she's done has been to protect Danica's legacy because I guess Danica is still thought of as this like, amazing person, this really powerful and fair alpha. And she's saying that I'm doing this to protect her legacy. I don't want people knowing that she's a thief and then
Mhm.
all of a sudden our family name drops.
Yeah. And this is very much in line with it being a patsy in a
Yeah.
like crime special.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Um so she says like if you do anything to jeopardize this, I'll kill you. And then she leaves. And they're like, "Okay, cool." But they're now sort of like, "Well, maybe we have to rethink this whole like maybe we have to rethink everything, right?"
Hmm.
Um I kind of laughed after that because obviously it sort of ruined the moment for the two of them. So they didn't really reconnect physically after that. Um
Unfortunately for us readers. Womp womp.
Unfortunately, but he masturbated after that, and like rightfully so. You were real turned on, dude. Like nuzzling her neck, like really was a turn on for you. So he said he masturbated hard enough after that he saw stars. And I really appreciate this because I feel like this is a common um it's a common sort of comparison for women when women orgasm in
Hmm.
fiction. Like women are always seeing stars when they're friggin' orgasm. And it's like, listen, if it happens, usually it's not you don't see stars.
Yeah.
If it happens at all.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that she applied it to a man in this case. But I also had to wonder, like, is that a thing for men? Can they see stars?
Looking women. Like,
Uh, no.
I think it's just her way of saying he orgasmed.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. But like, I think she's actually been,
It's a classy,
um,
classy way to say he came. Shot his load, if you will.
oh dear. So he had to take matters into his own hands. It was to Bryce's face the memory of her scent and that breathy moan she'd made as she'd arched against him that he'd come hard enough he'd seen stars. So like,
Mm.
it
She
wasn't
does
super.
say he came.
Yeah, like she's not super PG about it. Like she's not apologetic with saying like he came.
Yeah. She wasn't like, he saw stars as a euphemism for came,
Yeah. And like
which is often the case.
Yeah, and he even said, like, he had to take matters into his own hands,
Hmm.
literally. Um, but yeah, so it was just a funny thing that I noticed, like, he sees
Hmm.
stars. I wonder. They sort of spend the next few days, like, she's unhappy, she's upset that Sabine, um, blamed Danica for taking the horn. She feels sort of like Danica was a different person than who she knew. She's sort of
Hmm.
getting these revelations about her that she didn't realize. So, like, when Philip Briggs said that, he thought maybe she could be a sympathizer or an eventual rebel supporter. And now Sabine is saying she stole the horn. Like, she's getting pieces of Danica that she didn't expect. So she's sort of not unhappy, but she's like shelled again. She's a shell, a vacant shell.
Well, yeah, she's wondering if the person that she knew and loved, she didn't actually know. And if you don't know somebody, was the love even real? So it's a very hard.
Um, so they end up continuing their investigation. They figure out there's a new healing magic out there on the streets that's apparently twice as effective as First Light. So First Light is the thing that they use all the time. It's also so this new magic is called synthetic magic. And they're wondering if maybe this is the answer. Maybe this is what's going to heal the horn. Ruhn has a fancy starborn sword, right? That he got because he's starborn. But apparently he can't use it for what it's intended to do. So, like, channel his starborn magic. He can't use it without, apparently, there was a knife made to go with it. So, apparently, he can't use it. It was just a little note tucked in this chapter.
Mhm.
We don't know the significance. This is another breadcrumb that we're being left.
Yeah.
Then Therian from the river sends a little messenger otter. Ah,
Yes, please.
it's so
One for
cute.
me.
One for all of us. And he says that he's found bodies that match the Kristallos demon.
Maybe not one for all of us.
um, so they found bodies that they think match what the Kristallos demon does. And then they realized that Danica and the pack were liquefied. But the Kristallos demon hasn't been doing that. So, what they think is happening is that another demon is being summoned at the same time
Hmm.
as the Kristallos demon, and they're both sort of doing something. They realize that really the only thing to do is to summon a demon. So, they decide they're going to summon a demon from hell.
Yeah, Bryce kind of decides, and then Hunt is like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's true. Bryce makes the decision, doesn't really tell Hunt, and then she just does it anyway. Luckily and coincidentally, Bryce knows one of the 7 demon princes that we talked about a little while ago.
Yeah,
So, yay!
good for
How,
her.
right? I mean,
Props, girl.
right. So, his name is Adis. He's the Prince of the Chasm, and he's the third highest prince. So I guess he runs level 5 of hell, the chasm. 5 out of 7. So he's like the third highest. So I guess their numbers go opposite.
Hmm.
1 is not the highest. 7 is the
7 is
highest.
the highest, yeah.
Because 7 is the darkest, like it's the deepest level of hell. So that
Deep
makes it,
spit.
yeah, so that makes it the worst, which means the prince that's the most powerful can control them from that level.
Hmm.
So Adis is on level 5. So he's the third most powerful prince. So it's not too shabby to know the third most powerful prince of hell.
No.
Um they sort of talk a little bit. He likes to talk in riddles. But she summoned him, so like he can't exit the circle that she made. So they did it safely. And we sort of hear their story of how they met. Bryce actually met him when she was 13 outside of the Oracle Temple. So after she got uh, her visit with the Oracle and her vision, she was outside crying, and he was there as a white cat, like that's the form he took. And apparently he comforted her and he stayed with her until she was okay again, which is a really nice thing for a demon prince to do.
But also makes you think that he knew something that her father and maybe the Oracle didn't. Although I'm not convinced the Oracle doesn't know, but
Yeah.
he clearly saw something.
Yeah. You're right, because I don't think the Prince of Hell, well, one of the princes of Hell would just randomly comfort any old person.
Out of the goodness of his heart.
Yeah. So like obviously Bryce has something. Um they chat a little more and he says that there are other dimensions attached to the rift. So maybe it's not one of the princes that's rattling the world. Essentially saying, well, maybe like because there are other dimensions that are attached to the rift, maybe it's not one of my quote unquote brothers that wants to come out. Like maybe it's one of these other dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
And he also said, if you want to find Danica's killer, you have to find what is in between. So, like again, he's sort of talking in riddles a little bit, and then he leaves. He's like, like I'm gonna go hang out. Like I'm just gonna go.
Yeah. And Bryce is also like almost hypothermic at this point.
Yes, so we should mention that when he is like around and in the room, the room temperature sort of starts to drop
Mm-hmm.
because he's so like all consuming and powerful. So they sever the connection and then they contact Declan and ask them to run a new diagnostic on scent. So apparently, they looked at the tests that were run, and Declan says, "Oh, that's weird. Like, we have a really good test for smell, like to run diagnostics on smells, but it looks like the Autumn King wouldn't release the technology um, to let them use it on Danica's clothes, I guess." And so yeah, he did. He wouldn't let anybody use that technology for Danica's murder. And Bryce sort of sees red at this point. She
Mm-hmm.
literally just like goes blind with rage, flips her lid, and boots it out of the house. Like she books it and runs for her father's territory, the Five Roses.
Which is interesting to think like why wouldn't the Autumn King want to use this technology they have? It is interesting to think about.
Mm. It's definitely suspicious for sure.
Yeah.
And we haven't really looked in the Autumn King's direction yet.
Not yet, no. That's true. So that kind of wraps it up for this week. Um, if you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in our episodes or have any book suggestions, you can email us at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com. And be sure to check us out on Twitter and Instagram at Coffee and Co Read.
So next week we're going to be starting part 4 of House of Earth and Blood. So that is going to be chapters 52 to 70. So make sure you follow along. And if you're enjoying our little chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you find content. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you on the next page.